Hello guys, in this video we're going to go through how to get set up with your SQL environment, and in this video we'll be focused on how we use Google Colab to get you started in the easiest way possible on your SQL journey. Okay, so first of all, how do you get access to Google Colab? Simply Google Colab is available to anyone who has a Google Drive account. The easy way to go ahead and get it, because this is offered by Google, the same way they offer you Gmail or anything else, and it's freely available to you, and it gives you an online coding environment that just makes your life easy. So all you have to do is go to Google and search Google Colab. As I've done that, right? You'll see two links, one saying welcome to Collaboratory or Google Colab. Whichever it is, it's okay. All these are the right links. Just click on the one that you deem fit for you and it'll take you to the same page as you think about it. So I'll just click on this second one on my end, which shows me that I'm already signed in. And you can see when I open Google Colab, it does come up with a pop-up box that shows me all the recent files I've used. I can try locate files from my drive if I had already created some notebooks on my Google Colab and I save them on drive. I can upload other notebooks from my computer that I want to open on Google Colab. And I'll talk about notebooks in a few. Or I could even link them up with my GitHub, but I don't want to overcomplicate this. Most of us have not either used a notebook before, so this is definitely your first time. So most of the time you'll be coming in here and you'll be clicking a new notebook. But before we create a new notebook, I need to go ahead and talk about what's a notebook and why exactly are we using notebooks. So you will realize in your data science journey, you'll be working primarily with what we call the Ipython notebook. For those of us who will end up becoming data scientists primarily with Python. And there's a reason we use these and not typical Python files when you're working in data science. Let's give you an example. So there's this project done over here. It's a classifier. Let me just jump on it so that you guys get to see it. And you can ignore all this. This is just background knowledge to understand why we use notebooks. And this is a credit risk modeling project that has been done by one of the students at Zindua. And there's a reason why this project is done in notebooks. So the first reason is in a typical Ipython notebook, and I'll call it Ipython notebook, and that's why you see the extension here at the end of the file where I'm pointing, IPyNB. That in full stands for Ipython Notebook. So this is a Python environment and it is a notebook. And this is different from other types of Python environment first of all, instead of your entire file running at once, in a notebook, your code is blocked into cells. So this is an example of a code block. That's a cell. So if I was to run it, I would run it separately by itself. So that's a good example. And I run that, I complete it, and then I'll go ahead and create another cell, and then I'll keep running it by itself. And over the series of my project, I'll just keep adding cells of code and I keep running them. Why is this very, very important? Unlike typical software development, where you're trying to build something all at once, right, and get it all to run all at once because you have one output, in data analysis and data science, we are always trying to alter and we iterate processes gradually. So a good example is this person imported the libraries and then they ended up and loaded their data. But when they loaded their data, they wanted to go ahead and see how that data looks like. And that's why you can see they run that particular code cell with the output giving them an idea of what that data looks like. And then they went ahead and realized that the column names are a bit problematic. So they decided to add code to go ahead and rename those sort of column names. And then they ran to see what the new sort of data set looks like. And you can see it's different. Now, I don't want you to care about the code over here. I just want you to see the step-by-step process which you achieve with notebooks that you cannot get in your typical Python environment. And then you go to the next step now, and this person has decided to probably rename other things. I don't know what they're doing in that particular cell, but you can see it's step-by-step. And this sort of process continues. Like here, they want to do some analysis on the data to understand how many values do they have in each and every single column. right? And it goes on. And because we don't just care about one output at the end of the day, all these things make sense. When someone else is going through your project, they want to be able to see the step by step process you've taken. You also want to be able to go back in time to understand what has changed over time in your data set as you're doing your analysis. More importantly, when you start getting to the visualization layer, you're able to consolidate different visualizations within the same document, right? For example, this is the visualization for non-defaulter versus defaulter, and it makes life extremely easy. And you can see how smooth this is. So what is usually a very cumbersome code file with only one output is being converted into a notebook with multiple outputs that kind of build up to our data story, or the data story we're trying to build over here. And you can see this person, first of all, loads the data, visualizes those sort of columns, and then they go ahead and start the visualization by telling us what's the ratio of male to females of people who took loans, and so on and so forth. So that's the big advantage of a notebook. We're able to break down our code into code cells with different outputs that's able to give us a clean data story. The second most important layer of a notebook, which is very different from Python, is the fact that it's actually a notebook. We can add text there and comments. Not everyone who's going through this particular document is a developer. Probably right now, because you don't know so much of Python, you don't care what I've written over here. But this graph means something to you if you're going through this. So if I was to deduce my insight, I could easily write it into my notebook. So what was just a code block can now be transformed into different outputs pegged with their insights over a period of time. And this is the beauty of working with notebooks in data science. And because in the data science field, you're trying to draw insights, you're trying to make comments here and again, you're trying to create a cohesive document that any business wants to go ahead and read and understand what to do. This is a very essential layer of it. And you can see in this sort of code block, in this sort of notebook, they first of all gave us a background of credit risk. They went ahead and loaded their data. And then as they were visualizing, you can see they started putting in insights. Now, once again, I feel like they could even do way more on adding text to make this sort of document way more readable. And that's something I'll highly recommend as you start getting into this sort of deeper level. So this is the big advantage of Ipython notebooks and why we use it for data science. Now, so far you've heard me talk a lot about Python, Ipython, and you're wondering, this is an SQL course. Why does all that matter? It matters because, and I'll now go back to my previous page, and you can forget everything I've done so far because it does not matter to you. I was just trying to explain what a notebook is. And now I just want us to go back to Google and just search Google Colab again. Now, the reason I was just explaining that is so that you understand why we prefer notebooks, right? And why we'll tend to use notebooks. But I will go ahead and say that not only Python is run in Ipython notebooks. The good thing about Ipython notebooks is developers have been able to create extensions that allow us to run SQL within the same notebook. And in this sort of tutorial, I'll show you how to get set up in your Ipython notebook, in this sense, Google Colab, so that you can be able to run your SQL commands as simply as possible. So let's go here. And the moment you're on Google Colab, I hope you're with me now. So you'll go on Google, you'll search Google Colab, and when you get to this Google Colab page, you will see this sort of pop-up here. And when you get this sort of pop-up, because you're new here, all you'll do is create a new notebook, right? So we've created a new notebook for ourselves. Now, I won't call them Ipython notebooks anymore. I'll just call them notebooks now because we won't even be using Python in this notebook. Most of the time, we'll be using SQL, at least for the sake of this course. And the first thing I can do here is I'll go ahead and adjust the name. So in this one, I'll probably call it my Chinook. So this project of mine is called Chinook because that's the database I'm analyzing. It's going to be called Chinook Data Analysis IPyNB or Notebook. Just don't touch the extension. Don't touch the extension. I've already told you what it means. So that's the name of my project in general. You can give your project any name, right? But for me, I decided to name it over the database that I'll be manipulating over here in that sort of sense. And these are the 3 simple steps for you to get set up. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to install an extension, or rather a library, that allows us to run SQL on Ipython notebooks. And to install this, once again, you don't need to cram this. You can just go ahead and copy paste this. All I'll do is I'll run this pip install pymysql. And what this does is we're literally saying, so because this is a terminal command, and don't worry about the terminologies now. No one really cares about this. You're not a Python developer here. You're going to be focused on SQL, so you can literally copy paste what I'm saying. But usually on Google Colab, whenever you put an exclamation point, it means you're installing something to the terminal because there's no clear terminal here. For developers, you understand that if you're not a developer, just don't care about what I'm saying. But the most important thing is we want to install this library called mysql because that's exactly what you're trying to run over here. So just copy paste this exclamation point pip install mysql. Once again, the code snippets will be given for you, will be given to you either on Slack or at the bottom of this video, wherever you're getting it. So that's the first thing. And because I've created a code cell, and once again, creating a code cell, you just need to hover somewhere here or down below here, and you'll always see that sort of cell saying code, for example. Usually when I open my notebook, there'll always be a code cell given to me already. And on this side of the code cell, you can see I can either decide to add a comment, there's settings, I can delete it. I don't care about those ones for now. So for instance, I don't need this one, so I can delete that one. And to run the code, you'll see there's this sort of play button to the left, and all I need to do is click that sort of play button, right? And I'll wait for it to run, and now it's going to go ahead and install my package. And this is the one thing I want us to be very, very okay with as we are starting to get into SQL and programming in general. Always read whatever your code output is giving you. I think from the first session we saw a lot of people, you don't read the commands, yet the command will tell you where your mistake lies. So you can see this code of mine collected that library mysql, it downloaded it, and then it was able to install it, and my final message was successfully installed pymysql. Let's take an example of if I made an error over here and I wrote pymysq instead of pymysql, right? And you can see error, could not find a version that satisfies the requirement pymysq. So this means there's literally no library called pymysq. And Python tells me this whenever I make an error. So once again, the output messages are very key. They're even more important when you're making an error because they tell you exactly where you're going wrong. And it's time you get used to that. Don't just ignore them. Particularly when you're having a mistake, go ahead and read them. So I've just corrected my code and I have run it, and that's all set. Now, the moment I have pymysql installed, the easy thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run my code that allows me to now start running SQL on my notebook. And this is very simple. What I'll do is I'll put in the percentage sign. I'll go ahead and do load underscore SQL. No, I'm loading an extension. So load extension, and the extension I'm loading is SQL. Once again, you don't need to cram this. You can always have this set up, copy paste them into your environment whenever you're getting started. So the first thing is we are installing pymysql. The second thing is we are loading that SQL extension onto our notebook, right? And what this now does is it's gone ahead and told us that now I can run SQL in my Ipython notebook. What this was a Python environment, by me loading this extension SQL, it means I can now run SQL in this sort of environment. And we'll go ahead and run it in the next one. So before I do the next one, I want to go ahead and say and start introducing the database that you're going to be working on. Usually when you come to the left of your Google Colab, you'll always see the first thing will be table of contents, and I'll show you how this works out. So if I had text over here, and I could go ahead and say, I am installing SQL. So let me just click this edit button there, and I say I'm installing SQL, right? I could easily make this a title, right? And you can see if I click this, right? So before I had done, it was just like this. But if I come and click this sort of T over there, it makes it a title. If I click it again, it makes it a second header, so on and so forth, which is okay. Now, this is something called Markdown that you need not care about because Google Colab implements it for you. But anyways, I just want it to be a heading one, so I probably just need that as well. And the reason why this is so good is when I click enter. So I'll just run that as well. Another way to run your cell is to do shift enter, just as a shortcut if you just want to go faster, and enter takes you to a new line. And you can see, like, because I have a title within my code, it creates a table of content that makes it very easy for me to follow. It's not important, but if you're writing a really long notebook, probably this helps you in regards to locating different elements of your code. That's one thing. So you can have different sections. Now, I don't think you need to have a section called install SQL, but when you start getting to deep data analysis, you'll see how the sections become relevant. We have a search button that allows you to find and replace things, right, whenever you need it. So that's also an option. Like you do it in typical Excel or Word, that's not a problem. We have this variable inspector that I will not talk about right now, but most importantly, the final thing on the left is the files, right? And you can see these are the files. And what this means that these are the files that I'm attaching to my environment that I'll be using within this particular environment. Now today, we have shared with you a zip folder that contains a database called Chinook, right? And that's what you're doing over here. And what I'm going to do here is, there's nothing hard about it. Just go ahead and download that zip folder that you have access to on Slack or at the bottom of this video. And within that sort of folder, you will see a database called Chinook. And now when you come here to your Colab, if you've already downloaded that database on your computer, you'll just click this button and it is going to ask you to upload something from your computer, and you'll find the place where you have that sort of database and upload it. So I have my Chinook. It's actually not Chinook, it's called Chinook. And I'll upload it straight up to my environment. And I'll just click OK there. And it's going to gradually upload it. And now you can see that file that was in my computer has been uploaded to my Google Colab environment, and I can now use it, right? And this is the SQL database that we'll be working with over here. Awesome. Now let's go to the third step. Now that I have my database added onto the sort of thing, in the third step, I am going to go ahead and declare that, first of all, I am not running Python in my cell, I am running SQL. So I'll put that sort of percentage sign. But now what I really want to do is I want to call or read that sort of database. So first of all, this is an SQLite database, right? So this is an SQLite database. And the simple command for reading an SQLite database is to pretty much write SQLite. You'll put your colon, and then you'll put three sort of forward slashes, and then the name of the database, which in this sense is chinook.db, right? If your database is here, you'll just put this and then put the name of your database for now. So nothing much. If And once again, go ahead and say, let me just run that so that you can see that works. I can also come here and right click, and you'll see something called copy path. And that path is really simple. This is exactly what I'm adding over here. So this is found in the content folder and then Chinook. I really don't care about that because we're in the same folder here. If you had things in different folders, you'd have to put the folder name where you can find it and then the database, but we don't care about that. For the sake of simplicity, we don't want to add extra folders there. You're just going to go ahead and add the database there. So you're making this cell an SQL cell, and you're saying this is an SQL database that you're reading, and then you're adding that. Once again, this is something that you can easily copy paste when you're getting started. I want your first layers, like this sort of installation things, pretty much copy paste this sort of things. It'll come automatically to you later on. Probably what you need to focus on is setting up your environment so that you can start practicing the true SQL language and not just the installation steps. This will tend to come automatically over time. Okay, so I'll run this, and when I run that, and now I have my database pegged. Now, from now on, life will be very simple. Whenever I open a new cell on my notebooks, I'll just be putting 2 percentage signs, calling it SQL, and I can run any query now based on SQL. So let me give you an example of SQL that you can run on your phone to see if your database is working. So I want to select all from my sort of a table in my database that's called customers. So I already know how this database looks like. That's why I can tell you all this. So I want to select all entries, and this is the sign for all entries as you start learning SQL. from my table, this is the table name that's found in that sort of database. Once again, you'll go through this sort of database later on, don't worry about it. And okay, I don't know why I clicked that. So from customers, and because this might be so many entries, I just want to limit the amount of entries that I want to see to 5. So it's just that simple. So the first thing is, from now on, after importing my database like that, every time I put 2 percentage signs in SQL and I press enter, that cell becomes an SQL cell that you can run SQL code with. So that's it. And you can see now when I do that, I'm able to select all from customers within that sort of environment, which is a cool thing. Now, I don't know what other table we have over there, but this is the only table I have off of my mind. I should have gone through more of the database schema before this, but for now, this is well set. And the moment you can run this code and you can get this sort of output, then you know things are working well for you. So next time when this database changes from Chinook to, let's say, Zindua School database, which is going to be zinduaschool.db, and I'm just giving you as an example over here, you know that all you have to do is come upload it over here, right? Using that sort of thing, upload your database to this sort of environment. And the moment you have that database uploaded to that sort of environment, you will change this name to the name of your database. And all of a sudden, you will have your database pegged onto your notebook environment. And from then on, anytime you put in 2 percentage signs SQL and you press enter, whatever comes below that will always be SQL code. And that's what you want to be working with from now onwards. This is how you convert what was once a Python notebook into an SQL notebook without having to install anything on your computer.